Like in Hawaii, when I was with the Siddhaswarup's group, Siddhaswarupananda. Have you heard of it? So I was in Maui. Then I moved to another island where it's Honolulu, the main island. So then we were there a few months, and Prabhupada was coming there to the main temple. But we weren't part of ISKCON at all. So we were all going to go to ISKCON, to the temple. And Prabhupada was passing through with like Madhavisa, one other Swami, two other Swamis, maybe Devananda, he's passed away, and Madhavisa. And he was either coming or going from India, but stopping in Honolulu one day. It was like September 20th, 1970. I recently heard the tape, like within 10 years ago. Again, they had it in the archive. When I went to LA, I didn't see Prabhupada. I was there like from October or so until I left. Maybe 4 or 5 months I stayed. Then I went to New York to work with the other artists. So then Prabhupada came the first time to Henry Street. He had not been there before. And I got to go in because this artist always gets special favor. So even though I was a Bhakta, I went in to see Prabhupada. Even though I was a Bhakta in LA, I got to paint the deities. I was a Bhakta, I was painting the deities on the altar, because they didn't have it. At that time, there was, anyway, no artist there, so. But even before when I was in LA, I didn't see Prabhupada, but they used to have me painting all the Guru picture, the Prabhupada picture, and they had a big blow-up of a famous picture. You know, Guru Das took this picture from 2nd Avenue, where Prabhupada was like with the Bhagavatam there, just sitting, you know. And we had that a blow-up, and I used to work from that, and I could just always paint and look at his face, and I was amazed. Always like all the movements of his face were just like perfect, and all the compassion coming off all the time. Like he was just so grave and so deep. I was just painting, and I was looking at it. It was very amazing, you know. But when I went to LA, New York, I did one painting. They still have it, I think, upstairs in Brooklyn, where there's a profile of Bhaktivedānta Saraswati like this, and he has his sikha like that. It's a profile. Yeah. So shaved, clean. So I did that painting. They put it up, and behind it, inside the painting, I put the Radha Krishna and the gopis. Very kind of blurry, you know, but it's there. So it was funny because when I was doing the painting, Jadharani forgot this, but she told me that when it happened, Prabhupada looked at the painting and said, "Who has done this?" I wasn't there. I left, or I came back late. I saw him, but I wasn't there in the room. But when I did the painting, I couldn't. I was just a beginner, so it was okay. But there was a few things. So Bardraj worked on it for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, just fixed the nose or something. He did this. So when he looked at the painting, he said, "Who has done?" So Jadharani said, "Oh, there's a new boy, Matthew. He did it, Dr. Matthew." So Prabhupada said, "No, Bardraj has done." And she said again, No, the Bhakta did. No, Bardraj has done. Later I told her, she forgot a few things, but it was funny at the time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, But the big thing was, I remember that we sat there, there was a few big pastimes, you know. We're sitting, Prabhupada asked for all the artists, and he wanted us to go to India to learn, he said dolls. So we came in, I have a picture, we're all sitting there, Vishnu Das, even Janava's there, but she's not in the picture, Jadharani, Bhardraj, Parikshit, Muralidhar, me. And there was one British guy, he died, Peter Hawkins, he was there, a few other BBT, but so he was describing the dioramas that his Guru Maharaj made are very effective in how we should learn how to do this. And he kept saying dolls, and we're looking like, what's this dolls? We don't know what is dolls. What's the problem talking about? Dolls. Doll exhibit. But he meant, you know, sculpture when he said doll. Because it's not officially deity Murti, it's dolls, you know, it's dioramas. So we're listening, okay, he wants people to go. So finally, he's building it up, and he said, who wants to go? So Bhardraj said, I'll go. He was like the head of was head of art, but then he got into BTG. He was designing the BTG. Anyway, so he was going to go, and then this Peter Hawkins, he was an older guy, he had studied at the British Academy, Royal Academy in London, and he just said he wants to go. So Prabhupada kept talking, and like that, we're asking him questions, should we bring the art supplies? And he said, you bring 1 ton of art supplies. He said, if you need, you bring 1 ton. So then, it was funny, you have to know the little, I don't even want to talk about the whole history. There was Bali Mardan, he was head of the temple, GBC, head of BBT, big shot, you know. But he didn't want anyone to go. He wanted everyone to stay there. So, anyway, so then Prabhupada looked at Bali Mardan, he's sitting there. Let's say this is Prabhupada, Bali's there. And so he looked at him and he said, you wire Jaipataka and find out what they need, you know, what to need, what to bring. And he said, business means immediately. Always remember that. Prabhupada said, business means immediately. Business means immediately. You want to do business? Now. Wire him. Those days, no email, you had to wire. So, but Bali Mardan didn't want to have nothing to do really, because a few minutes later, at the end of the conversation, Prabhupada kept talking. He said, so who else wants to go? So I was in the back, Vishnudas and me, we're Brahmacharis, but we're not head of art department, we're like, you know, less important, you know, especially me. Well, Vishnudas too, but I couldn't get along with Jadharani and all, you know, I used to paint I stopped painting even at the studio, I painted in the ashram, get away from, you know, they didn't want me, I didn't want them, whatever, you know, there's too many people in one art room. Anyway, so I raised my hand, and Bali Mardan's sitting there, and he went like this, put your hand down. You're not going anywhere, he said. In front of Prabhupada. That's what, Prabhupada didn't do anything, he's sitting. Can you imagine? Prabhupada's telling us to go, and he's sitting, and he's telling, you're not going anywhere, put your hand down. And Prabhupada just sat like this, like nothing happened. You think he didn't hear it? Of course he heard it. Anyway, this part of the story. Because what happened, when we went outside of the room, we were like an hour and a half, oh, so many devotees out in the lobby there in Henry Street. Oh, you know, in Prabhupada for like an hour and a half, and you know, what happened? So we thought it, so then Bhardraj was already had in his mind, he's going to go to India. So he asked Bali Mardan, he said, is it okay if I sell my, the recent punches? He did some painting, nice painting. He said, can I sell it and get money? And Bali Mardan said, you don't need to go to India. He said, you've seen a woman in a sari, you've seen a palm tree, you don't need to go. He's Prabhupada telling and he's saying this. Anyway, it's funny, pastime. For some reason or other, Krishna was like using him. He said, he didn't have to do this. He said, you have a painting you want to show Prabhupada? And I said, yeah, I was painting right in that same building because most of the artists were 3 blocks away at the press. I said, yeah, I have Bhakti-vedānta. painting here. I want to show Prabhupada. He said, okay, let's go. We show it. I said, but the finger coming out of the bead bag wasn't finished. He said, it's okay, come on. So, first thing I go in, Prabhupada's looking in the mirror, putting tilak, and he sees me through the mirror like this, and he says, you can go to India. I had nothing. He did the first thing. He said, so you can go to India for some days? Just like a continuation from 8 months ago, right? And I said, yeah, I can go. And Bābājī was right there, It was so funny, He didn't want nobody to go. It's a long story. You probably heard some. So he's putting tilak, you can go to India for some days? Like I said, yeah, I can go. But what's funny was, I know, Bābājī brought the painting without me. Then he brought me. Then he said, Prabhupada wants to see you. And then he said it. See, he brought the painting, didn't bring me in. He just brought the painting of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in. So then he says, Prabhupada wants to see you now. I said, well, but what about that finger? He said, I didn't show him the finger. I didn't show him the finger. Of course he showed him the whole painting. It was just funny. I remember he said that. It was very funny. And he didn't expect, I don't know what he expected. Prabhupada immediately said, you can go to India for some days like that. So then I thought, I'm going to India, no question, I don't care. This Bābājī's a rascal, crazy guy. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But just the pastimes of Henry Street were interesting. When I got second initiation, that was also Bābājī was involved. First Kirtananda I was in the road show, and one day I had no shirt. Kirtananda went like this, like, what is it, like Brahmin thread. He went like this. And that was in 71. And I got, earlier in the year, I got first. And he said, I wrote Prabhupada, you can get second initiation. But then the letter never came. So when I went back to Brooklyn, finally I got on the schedule and I got it later. So what happened was many people came from different parts of different temples, and Bābājī never wanted them to come because he didn't want to feed them. And so he wouldn't let anyone call any temple, But Kirtananda showed up anyway. He used to always hear it from his spies, and he would come. It was funny because all these people sat in the yajna with Prabhupada, and the banana, everything, about 20 people to get second initiation. And then Bābājī came and said, okay, nobody's getting it. Because Prabhupada said nobody's really qualified. But we never knew because Bābājī was such funny, But that was 72 even. So anyway, what happened was, so they sat in the yajna with Prabhupada and the Vyasa-san, but nobody was going to get it now. So weird, We thought, this guy is crazy. We didn't know if Prabhupada said it or he said it or what. So finally, he eliminated everyone but the 4 people from that temple, from Brooklyn Temple, me and Navadvip, Varanasi, and somebody, I think Puru. He said, we can get it. So I said, well, how come we can get it? He said, oh, you're from this temple, it's okay. He didn't want to. He's a funny guy, So then I'm about to go in after to get the actual mantra, and I'm standing in the doorway like, my back is on that side, his back is on the other side, like this doorway, Bali says, why should you get it even? I said, I don't know, you can stop it. He said, just go get it. I can't stop everybody, somebody, So I went inside there with Prabhupada alone, And it was the most amazing thing because, I'm sitting, and I forgot how it was, but so he's giving me the thing and he's chanting, and then he's like that. And all of a sudden now, I'm not in this room anymore, but I'm seeing this Narad Muni, and I can see that Prabhupada is actually like Vyasadeva. Exactly, Sukadev. And they're all coming through and appearing, and I don't see Prabhupada. I see Prabhupada, but I see all these great sages and, paramparā. Of course, in those days, I wasn't familiar with, everybody, Vishwanath Chakravarti. You don't know too much about that, but Bhaktisiddhanta, all these great persons, and Prabhupada's act. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. We're in Brooklyn, here, but we're actually associating with all these great persons. And Prabhupada is like the embodiment of all of them, Not that he's better or anything, but they're all coming through him. And he's here. He's completely in another category, not part of the world. It's completely amazing. Prabhupada says, do you know this song, Jai Radha Madhava? His famous tape. And everyone goes, yeah, Jai, Haribol. Do you know this song, Jai Radha Madhava? It's a very famous tape. And he chants, Jai, really heavy. And he changed the words like Gopi Jana Ranjan instead of Gopi Jana Ballava. He was like spontaneous changing the words, But everyone said, yeah, because we used to chant a different tune. We used to Jai Radha Madhava Kunj. It was a really funny song, a tune. We didn't know the tune, but we had the words. So Prabhupada gave the tune. He had already done it in L.A. and Delhi, but then he came there to give the actual way to chant. Of course, Gaudiya Mata, they still chant Jai Radha Madhava Jai. They added Jai, but Prabhupada didn't put the extra Jai for some reason. He didn't do it. So that's when he started the Jai Radha Madhava really big time. What happened though? He's sitting. There's a long temple room in Henry Street, not very wide. It was just like maybe a little wider than this, or about this wide, but longer, if this wall wasn't there, that's all. So when he started to chant that, I was up near the deities. I used to stay near the deities. So all the people around Prabhupada, they crowded around, And then later on, they said that Prabhupada changed different colors. What I saw, and I was sitting, was when it started to chant with this voice, there was these pillars. There was 2 square pillars, one on this side, one on that side. Like about in the middle of the temple, just 2 pillars. Maybe they helped hold up the building. But it appeared like they were like moving when Prabhupada chant, like undulating, like this, like just moving with his voice. And the wall, I was looking around like this. I was looking like, what's going on here, Then later on, they told me that Prabhupada tears were coming out like that and hitting people, just like, like Lord Chaitanya is coming out. And he was changing from pink and then white and different colors, like his whole face was changing. It was completely, I couldn't see anything. There was like 40, 50 devotees. I didn't even know what was going on. I just looking around, the whole room was just like gone, Gloka Vrindavan, It was amazing. I was painting, they're still on the doors, painting, they're all worn out now, like colors. But when you come up the steps in Mayapur, you go one side Prabhupada. So this one tall English devotee, he was painting the doors on Prabhupada's side. Some of them painted over. Most of them are there still. So I vanished them like about 5 years ago. And but it was way too late, they're like 35 years old. And I was painting the other side. So one day nobody was around, and so he was circumambulating that, veranda. So he came to my side. I was standing up on a box or a chair, and I was just painting. It was this painting of Krishna Balaram is jumping off the mountain, just copying from Krishna book, So Prabhupada stopped and he said, how long this has taken? And I said, I'm so slow. It took about a week, And Prabhupada just said, slowly but surely. And he just chanting, kept chanting, slowly but surely. It's funny. But at that time, I was with Bhardraj, and that was like in 75, we were discussing the art, about the ceiling. I was telling them upstairs, I think. So at one point, I had done this painting, it's still there, of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's sitting in a chair, a wooden chair, and with shoes on and everything, in his Bhagavatam or some book, big book. So he called me and Bhardraj, and people were coming, Prabhupada wants to see you. So then me and Bhardraj stayed in like an hour discussing art. But at one point he said, he was talking about whether the local Bengalis were going to do big murals or we were going to do it, and then he said, our man can't do it. He said, I have seen, because this big tall Anukudundabi, he's like 6'7", big guy. But he used to do night guard with me also. But so when he painted the door, right, he was right there. Probably could see him, He would always like, nod off right in front of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, I've seen our men 3 hours for one line. 3 hours for one line. He said, he imitated him sleeping. He said, our men cannot do 3 hours for one line. But it was very sarcastic. I used to always go by the window to check what's going on, you know, sneaking around. That's why I got a lot of stuff, you know. It's just as soon as I got to the window, I heard Prabhupada say, just see, he has become a Brahmin and he cannot even close the door because the doors were slamming in those days. Then they put these little things so they couldn't slam, but before that, bang, slamming, you know, a lot of wind. So I heard Prabhupada say, just see, he has become a Brahmin, he cannot even close the door. I saw like a couple days before he left, I had to go to Delhi because I bribed this, few weeks before I had bribed the CID, you know, the visa. But somehow or other, devotees came and said, oh, they're trying to get you, they want to arrest you. So I went and I was hiding. So then I spent my last amount of rupees to go to, so I don't remember the last exact time, but a few days before. But the very day Prabhupada left, or that day, I went to the American Express to get some money or something, and Gopal Krishna Maharaj came, jumped, running up the steps. Somewhere in the middle of Delhi, and there's Gopal Krishna at the American Express. In those days, you couldn't get money. The only way you could get money, American Express. So then he said, Prabhupada's going to leave in 6 hours, like that. And I said, oh my God, because we thought he was going to stay 10 years. We didn't know anything, you know. Prabhupada's a great mystic. He could stay for 100 years. All of a sudden, Gopal Krishna says he's going to leave in 6 hours. 6 hours. So I said, and it takes 3 or 4 hours to get to Vrindavan, you know. Plus, I had no ride, so I said, and I just spent all my money on a ticket to go to Nepal, Kathmandu, to get a new visa because I was illegal. So I said, what should I do? And I said, is there room? And Gopal Krishna said, no, you should stay here. And Prabhupada leaves, we'll call you, and you can call the West. I thought, this is funny. I have a job like this. This is my job now. I have to call the West to tell them that Prabhupada's going to leave. He hasn't even left. This Gopal Krishna told me to do this. He wasn't a Swami even then. He took sannyas. He was Gopal. So, and also there was no room. He was going in the car. And I was leaving. I had no money. They wanted to arrest me. So I thought very quickly, well, I could try to force my way in the car, or I could stay and fly. Maybe he's not going to leave. I said, well, how do you know he's going to leave? He said, no, the Kaviraj said 6 hours. So he got in his car and left, and I went to the temple. And they called at 7:14. They said, right after they said Prabhupada left. So at that time, you know, they couldn't call from Vrindavan to the West. You had to call Delhi only. And so there was one other devotee there, Jayo. So 2 of us, you know, I called lightning call. In those days, you had to put lightning, or else you couldn't get through. So somehow or other, immediately they put me with L.A. And I called the L.A. temple and told them. Me and Jayo, I think it was L.A. I might have called London too, but I know we called. It was a terrible thing to tell people. Then the next morning, I flew to Kathmandu to get the visa, but I never got the visa even. Then 4 days later, I came back to the funeral, but they already put Prabhupada in the Samadhi. But they had a big festival, like thousands of people came, you know, all over Vrindavan and gave prasad. Hare Krishna.